r/NoSleep. Posted by u/AliasForWhom. My friends and I had to figure out which one of us died. It had been the 5 of us circled around the table. 5 of us, a few too many bottles of hard liquor, and a 6-round cylinder Colt Python. I had sat closest to the large glass door. The chill from the lake below surged across the pure white snow, billowing over the small cabin, icy tendrils grasping at the back of my neck. Ryan was to my left. His parents owned the cabin. Then there was Diego. He drove us all up there. Next in the circle was Justin. He owned the revolver. Back around to my right was Sam, my best friend. He proposed the game. Russian roulette. There are 6 chambers, 1 bullet. It's wild, but we'll be fine. Sam argued. We put 1 bullet in 1 chamber, spun the cylinder, put the gun to our head, click. Pass it on. We were a drunk. Click. Pass it on. We were stupid. Click. Pass it on. So incredibly stupid. It went off. I shudder just thinking about that day. But it was nothing compared to when we all met there again. Sam and I were the first to arrive for the reunion. We walked through the living room in silence, taking in the space with something between reverie and dread. It felt somehow like decades and no time at all had passed. Sam broke the silence. It's dusty. It was dusty last time, I responded. Yeah, I know, he said. I remember pitching to the gang we do a deep clean the last day. He managed to laugh. Right, I remembered. Diego pitched to fit. Sam hollered out, like Diego had. I didn't do all this driving to clean up a rich fucker's lake house. We both laughed now. Maybe it was impolite, but it was necessary. Sam wandered off to the garage while I got myself a glass of water from the kitchen, and I missed having him there the second he was gone. The silence was deafening, with only the ticking of the clock on the wall bouncing against the fine wood space. I sipped from my cold glass while I watched the hands on the clock trudge in their circle, from the 12, to the 3, to the 6, to the 9, from Ryan, around to Justin, around to Sam, from one empty chamber, to another, too. Justin walked into the room, rubbing his hands together from the cold. Ethan. Hey! He held a hand out towards me, then shuffled in for a hug instead. You're just trying to steal my warmth, aren't you? I joked as I squeezed him. How are you holding up? Amazing. Aren't we all? He sighed and let go from the hug. As he took out a flask, he continued. I don't know, man. I don't know why we're still here. Why we're back, I mean. It's just gonna. He took a swig. It's just gonna hurt. Not having him with us. I nodded quietly. We have to try and move on, I guess. The flask hit the floor with a clatter. I stared at him in confusion, and saw his face have completely paled. He was staring out towards the living room, where Diego stood. Diego raised an eyebrow. Why the fuck are you looking at me like that? The counter groaned against Justin's weight as he reeled back. He pointed at Diego with a shaking finger. No, you. Sam re-entered from the garage with Ryan, and they both stopped as if they hit a brick wall. 5. The 5 of us had arrived. We erupted into chaos, exclamations of confusion, horror, amazement, anger overlapping one another. You're fucking dead. I saw you, Diego yelled at Ryan. Sam only leaned on the doorframe, looking up and down Justin. What's happening? My voice came out as barely a whisper. The gun had rung out. I remember that sound, so loud, and the panic, and then. You're okay. Sam walked over to Justin and laid his hand on his arm, his chest, his face. Holy shit, you're actually okay. I could hear the tears in his voice. But the gun had gone off. It echoed. Someone had pulled the trigger and blasted open their skull, and yet here we all stood. A glint of light caught my eye. A whiskey bottle sat on the table, the last droplets shimmering as we disturbed the area with our presence. Next to it were a plethora of red Solo cups, and the revolver, right in the middle of the table. I looked back. Ryan turned to me at the same time, having taken in exactly what I had, and behind his eyes was processing what I was processing. We were back. Or had we even left? I remembered that resounding shot. I remembered the panic, and after that, things get fuzzy. How long ago was it? Or had it happened yet? Everyone, Ryan said at last. Quiet. The group settled and backed away from one another, except for Diego, who made a beeline straight to Ryan. No, this shit isn't right. I saw you put that fucking gun in your mouth. I saw your brains fucking. He choked on his words, choked on the anger and sadness and fear. "I never touched the gun," Ryan said, keeping his eyes on mine. "I don't know what's happening, but if we all panic, we're not going to be able to figure it out." "This isn't a goddamn math problem," Diego yelled. "Justin," Ryan started, ignoring Diego, who was holding the gun when it went off. Justin's eyes remained lost, his pallor growing worse by the second. I saw Diego. That's all he could get out before he slipped off the counter. Sam barely caught his head before it cracked against the floor. Ryan continued. "Sam? Someone get Justin some water," Sam pleaded. "Who got shot, Sam?" asked Ryan, not without severity, but definitely without the compassion one would use when asking about a close friend's death. "Ethan, get Justin some water," Sam yelled, but I was rooted to the spot. The room felt like it was spinning around me. 12, 3, 6, 9, 12, 3, 6, 9. Sam reacted like it was Justin who. I managed to get out. Ryan studied me a moment, then walked over to the revolver on the table. He reached out for it, but I saw him twinge with fear. He planted both his hands on the table, then hung his head, overwhelmed. After about 20 minutes, Justin was back on his feet, Diego had cooled down slightly, and Ryan remained in the exact same spot. Sam sat on the floor beside me. The water. Maybe? Something in the water that caused us to hallucinate or something? Because everyone's fine. For a moment, he sounded almost elated. I couldn't respond though. I watched Ryan, a silhouette against the glaring white of the snow outside. I wanted to know what was going through his head, if he was making any progress there between Diego's chair and Justin's. Something came together in my head. I stood up, and walked over to the table, with its 5 chairs and 1 revolver. Each of us always sat in the same spot, for food, drinks, games. "Let's sit," I said. Everyone looked to me. "What?" Diego asked. Ryan finally raised his head to me. "Let me see something," I said. "Can we sit?" A few moments later, everyone was shuffling to their spots. As Ryan sat down, Justin hesitated. "I don't want to get near that thing." He wouldn't even look at the firearm. It slid off the table in Ryan's grasp, and he put it on the ground. "It's okay. I got it." Everyone settled. I did one look around the circle, and felt a pit in my stomach as I saw my inkling had some weight to it. Diego went first. Then we went clockwise from there. Justin, Sam, me, and Ryan. Sam nodded, thoughtfully. "I don't see why any of this matters. We're all fine. No one got hurt. Why don't we just leave?" "Because it's not right," Tyler said. "It's not. Correct. Diego says it was Ryan who. Where the gun went off. Justin says Diego. Sam says Justin. It's the one right before each person." I looked at Tyler. "For you, it was me?" He nodded, his eyes shifting between each of mine, searching. "This is fucked up. Is one of us supposed to be dead?" Diego asked. "I don't want to be here. I don't want to." Justin muttered to himself, somewhere in his head. "No one has to die," Sam begged. "We can just leave. We can go home." "Does anyone remember calling an ambulance?" I asked. "Does anyone remember what happened after? Did we ever leave this cabin?" I looked from face to face, seeing everyone search their memories and come up blank. I think. Maybe this is some sort of open loop, and these are all variables that we need to close. There needs to be an answer. Diego stood from the table. "What the fuck are you talking about? I am not putting a goddamn gun in my mouth to close a variable." "We're overthinking this," Sam said in his most soothing voice. "Let's all head home, take some time to clear our heads." "Who shot themselves, Ethan?" Ryan asked me. I was dreading this. I didn't want to lie. I knew that we all needed to be honest with each other if we were gonna figure this out, but I didn't know if I could say it. I took a deep breath. "I don't remember." "Oh, fuck off," Diego yelled. "How do you not remember?" Justin asked. "Buddy, it's fine if you saw me," Sam said. "I'm fine now. Everything's okay." I shook my head. "No, I really don't. I know it's frustrating." "You're lying." Another blank statement from Ryan. His eyes were lasers into me. "You weren't shocked to see anyone today. You've been avoiding it all day, but I see you." He brought the gun back onto the table, then slid it to me. "I remember you dying. And so do you." The python spun slowly on the stained wood, its barrel glaring at each of us, then resting on me. "Ethan?" Justin whispered. "Guys. Stop. You're all acting insane." Sam stood now, and went to grab the gun, but for the first time, Ryan lost his composure. "No. I know what I saw and this bastard knows it too. I'm willing to be proven wrong, but either way, if you want to fix this, you spin that cylinder and put the gun in your goddamn mouth like you did before." "Ryan." Sam stormed over to Ryan, but was intercepted by Diego, who threw him back into his chair. "Get back. What if he's right? No one has to fucking die." It became a cacophony of noise from there. My heart was in my throat, staring at the revolver on the table. I wanted everyone to calm down, I wanted it all to stop, so I reached for it. The moment that I did, I knew Ryan was right. I felt the cold metal in my mouth, the blast of adrenaline, then the heat. I had shot myself. I had died. But it was an accident. I didn't want this. I broke the circle. I pushed the table away. I darted to the glass door behind me and peeled out into the snow. The cold bit into my feet with my first steps, but I didn't care. I knew that the only thing ahead of me was the frozen over lake, but I had to go somewhere. I had to get away and hide. "Ethan." A furious voice behind me. "We have to fix this." A dead-set voice, much closer, right before he caught my ankle. The snow crunched against my face, only for a moment before I was flipped over. A pair of hands gripped my throat. Through blurry eyes, I saw Ryan on me. His cold eyes barely concealed the anxiety coursing through him. "We have to make it right," he whispered through gritted teeth. A shot sounded. Crisp. Singular. Those cold eyes widened, glazed over, then his grip loosened as Ryan toppled over. The gun shook in Sam's hands for only a moment before it fell away. The snow turned red around Ryan's head. We called 911. We went home. For better or worse, nothing was the same after that night. I don't blame Ryan at all. His reaction to whatever happened to us was barely different from my own. I haven't seen Justin or Diego since. I don't think I ever will. I miss all three of them deeply. I still see Sam sometimes. He was let off pretty easy. Ryan was trying to strangle me and he came to my defense. Still, he blames himself for the whole thing. It was his idea to play the game. But I often think he was right. Statistically, it was more than possible that the gun could have never gone off that night. 6 chambers, only 1 bullet. We could have been fine. Still, we never play games of chance anymore.